And then you do the same. And then we're in sync.
Beautiful.
I think. Well, later on we will be.
Yeah. If nothing else, we've at least had our first applause for the day. So everything's okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. Today my guest is Julz Parker.
Hello, Poddles.
Julz, you have a band with Leesa Gentz called the Hussy Hicks.
Yep, I do indeed.
You've been doing that for quite a while, and it's what we would call, I would say, relatively successful.
Yeah, well, we keep managing to do it and staying alive and travelling the world and making new albums. So I reckon if my kid self had looked forward and seen that this is what we're doing, she'd be happy. And so I reckon that's successful enough.
It's a testament to you guys. There aren't a lot of people that manage to have gigs constantly touring the world, playing to packed houses, selling albums, or playing original music. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I do feel super fortunate, but I also know that we both have been doing this with all our hearts since we were, 10 years old and stuff. So it's lovely that, when we combined our energies back in 2007.
Wow.
It did feel like we were instantly rewarded for all those years of slogging it out, and it was almost like a little treadmill started, in front of us, and we just had a ball chasing it along the line, and that's been, 17, 18 years now of doing this Hussy Hicks thing, and it's
17, 18 years.
It's still fun.
It seems like that's gone pretty quick.
Yeah, it really has. It's only when you count the years that you realise it's been that long, because otherwise it's sort of, it's an upcoming tour, and then it's, we better write some songs, and then it's, we better record some songs, and then it's a tour, and then it's catching up with friends, and, in all of those phases, lots of musical connections around the world that keep it all fun and rolling along, and, not a chore and not something that feels like it's taking a long time, just something you look back and go, oh gosh, that's a long time.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're having fun, time just flies by.
It does, apparently. Yeah.
I remember you being a teenager and your dad would bring you along to gigs.
Yep.
And I can remember that there was a lot of talk around town about this young girl guitar player who was amazing.
Yeah, well, I guess...
When did you start playing?
I started playing violin when I was 3.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I gave that up for cartoons at around 5. But then I picked up the guitar again at about 7. I think, that was just what I kept seeing. Dad and his friends were playing Neil Young songs around the table, and so I started playing, Helpless by Neil Young was my first guitar song. Dag, 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 I called it. And I remember sitting in the, my bedroom as a childhood bedroom and jamming with Dad, and remembering that point where you're just changing chords, and at first everything stops between each chord. And I remember that moment where, even though you might not have made the first drum, the song keeps going, and you're...
The flow.
Yeah, feeling a part of that space where a song continues and you just keep up and play. And, I was playing DAG, and then I just got really excited and, started becoming a little guitar geek and studying everything, which is why I got Dad to take me to see you, because you were, one of the best guitar players in the area at the time. And we were, so you want to go and see all the people, live players were always my inspiration more than sort of television or record players.
So your dad was obviously, because he plays harmonica and probably several other instruments as well. Obviously, that was probably the big influence of getting into it in the first place?
Definitely his love of music got me into it, and, he often said, and I tend to agree, he had a really simple approach. So it wasn't overly daunting to just sit in and play that stuff, and then to feel like, look, I'm already playing what Dad can play. I might learn other things. Maybe I should stick at this. I'm not completely rubbish, So.
You've also got brothers
Yep.
A sister as well?
Nope. I
Just
have
brothers?
5 younger brothers.
5 younger brothers?
Yeah.
And I don't know if all of them are involved in music, but I know that quite a few of them are.
They have all played music to decent levels, and 3 of them have played, in touring bands and around the place.
Because he's pplaying bass with Electric Lemonade?
Yeah, Sam and Max. Max plays
Max
sax.
plays sax, that's right, he does
Sam
too.
plays bass.
Yeah.
And my brother Joe, he toured around in my first band, Project Winterhaven, for years, and he's still a beautiful player. And then Lewis was a great little drummer growing up, and Danny, he actually, he's never done any of the professional stuff, but, we've used some of his guitar interludes on our recorded music, and he's a great little drummer too. So
oh, wow.
we all there's always an instrument. There's always a bunch of instruments set up at home, and they often just come out, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing. Can you remember when you first went out and gigged on your own?
On my own, started because I was a little electric guitar player. On my own was always just, saddling up to someone with a bunch of songs and, having the joy of getting to play with them. The first times I went out to even play at all were just like, a jam night at the Cooley Sands or a talent quest or something. And, you'd rock up and have to have your own few songs if no one else was there to jam with, but always hopefully there'd be someone with some songs and you'd get to play. So and I think I was about 12 or 13 when I used to start doing that, and it was just excellent. But and then I just sort of saddled up alongside. First of all, you might remember Donna and the Moderation.
Yes.
Great family band in the 90s, and they just had
a talented bunch of people.
Oh, so talented, and such a beautiful repertoire of songs, stuff from the Four Tops through to rock classics. So just as a little 13-year-old guitar player, it was just this beautiful soundscape that I got to just play with. And then I used to sit in with Joe and Bertie from Double Shuffle for a bit.
Yeah.
And then they had your James Taylors and that sort of,
so
Jackson
you've been
Browns.
exposed to quite a variety of music.
Yeah, so that was at the start in those sort of early teen years. I would just rock up and get to jam with people if they'd have me, and that was get a window into some of the greatest songs ever written, and get that to be your little playground for a few years.
You can sing, because I've seen you do it.
Yeah.
But what was the thing that made you concentrate on playing guitar and not singing?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because when I was a little kid, I used to like singing like every kid does, but I think I just found that I was more passionate about playing guitar, and that's where I threw all my focus. And I guess my guitar playing got to a level that my singing wasn't at pretty quickly, and I spent the rest of my life trying to
even up.
Yeah, not let my singing self piss off my guitar playing self.
Oh, wow. Whereabouts in the whole trek of things was the Wazza Millsy thing?
That, I met them both in Cronulla. I met them both at Sawtell at a rehearsal. I was playing with Phil Emmanuel as a 15-year-old, so it was like, wow, my dreams have come true. And Wazza and Mills rocked up, and I remember Waz had some chicken feet shoes. And, they both had the best Billy Ray Cyrus mullets you've ever seen, and, they're both larger than life and just amazing characters. And I was just like, oh no, I'm a 15-year-old and I'm now the third best guitar player in the band, and because Chris Haig was there too.
Oh man, Chris Haig, man.
Yeah,
he's a great guitar player.
Great guitar player, great
monster bass player,
and just a great human.
Yeah,
yeah.
Another Scorpio.
There you go. So that all makes sense now. Yeah, so that's how I met Mills and Wazza, and then we did that one gig. Like often happens, it was going to be a whole tour, but the whole tour turned into a gig or two, and then I didn't see them for a couple of years, and I think I was at the Playroom Underage Rage. They'd have a band on a Thursday or a Wednesday night once every month.
Wow.
For all the children.
Yeah.
And I was one of the children there, and I'm pretty
because you lived out back at Currumbin.
Yeah, Tallabudgera Valley.
Tallabudgera Valley. Yeah. So coming to the Playroom wasn't far away from home.
It was perfect. I thank my parents for choosing it. I just wish it was still there and wasn't a car park, because what a great venue that was.
Oh man, like so many of those venues that back in that time, the Bombay Rock, the Playroom, Jet Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, I missed the others, but I got the last few months of the Playroom, and it was one of these underage nights, and I rocked up outside and I saw there was like I don't know if it was CFM or Gold FM back then, and I was an outside broadcast, and I was like, that looks like Wazza. And it was Wazza.
Oh.
And yeah, so we reconnected then. They're like, yeah, we've just moved up here and we're setting up a studio, and they asked me to come and play with one show they were doing, and then they ended up just saying, oh, can you just play all the things? So yeah, I had a good year or so.
So you then became a part of the Beach House band?
I did. I had my were they Okanuis and brightly coloured clothes, and by then I was old enough to drink jungle juice, so it was quite a fun little segue into adult life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you meet Leesa?
I met Leesa in the end of 2004. She'd been working overseas and I'd been living overseas, and Tracy, who was my high school best friend who still plays bass with us, she'd been playing with Leesa in another band, and we all sort of just landed back in the Gold Coast and Northern Rivers at the same time. And I was sort of shifting my life back here after a few years overseas, and she was doing similar, so we all just had heaps of free time, so we just ended up having a ball and going to the Lennox Jam night and hanging out and playing music, and yeah, and then it was all we weren't playing gigs or anything, we were just hanging out, but guitars were always going around as they do, and we were just back recording we almost recorded a posthumous album for Project Winterhaven, really, because the band had
basically
was sort of imploded. Like Chubbs, he was going in another direction, with more of a work life, and Joe was moving to Brazil to be with his wife for many years. So everything was wonderful, but it was like, let's just record these songs. But yeah, Leesa got offered a contract in Dubai, just playing acoustic tunes. So yeah, we filmed like us playing one or two songs at the Lennox Jam and pretended we were a really together band. And I was like, great, that'll get me back to London, and that'll be fun. And yeah, and we went and got there, and the sort of, what do they call it, the food and beverage manager comes down. He's like, great, play us some songs, and we're like, geez, we haven't actually ever rehearsed the song. We were just getting by on the fact that we all know how to play songs, and we know how to play songs together. And they're like, oh, well, something with 3-part harmonies. So, okay. And it was Lisa's sister, Christy, and her. So I was like, well, you guys do something with 2 parts that and then I'll just noodle and chuck in the 3rd part. And we pulled it off, and, we did 3 months there. And, yeah, and that was sort of when we started playing music together. And it was just, funnily enough, that was, because we were in the Middle East, it could have been just a cover gig. But we're like, no one knows if we play a Missy Higgins song that's #1 in Australia, these people might not know it anyway. So
it may as well be an original.
So yeah, we'd just play whatever we wanted, and as long as there was a couple of big moments, that if there was a sing-along that someone needed and you brought the right energy at that time. So we ended up knuckling out a whole bunch of songs, and that's where the first Hussy Hicks album came from. Christy was actually part of it when we started, and because she's a beautiful songwriter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but she ended up getting offered a TV job in
because she's a stunning looking lady.
Yeah, she is, and she's amazing in front of a camera. Like, you see her do a to-camera piece, and you're like, how do you remember all that? Like, she can just turn on and be like,
super
remember
focused.
all this stuff and do it, and she's really gifted
Really good
in that
at it.
way. But yeah, we basically, there was a big stuff around. We were making an album. It was one of those big promises, little return things. And in the meantime, I ended up making a little demo album. Just not like, so I was like, I'm going to go crazy if we wait for this producer guy who is minimising the Pro Tools session to watch shop in between takes. Like, this is not working. So yeah, we ended up putting together this little sort of 7-track demo EP back in the hotel. I was just lucky, I had friends there, and I borrowed some Genelecs and some things, and yeah, and that little 7-track ended up, I was asked to do another USA tour by some friends, and I thought, if we put some other stuff together, that might work. And I don't really like playing on my own that much. I had done the last American tour on my own.
Oh, wow.
which is great, but it's a bit
Lonely?
different, a bit lonely. And I for me, musical interaction is sort of the most exciting bit. And on a solo gig, the crowd can be the other half of that interaction. And, some of those gigs are so special because you have that connection and it's not lonely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I basically just asked Leesa if she wanted to come. She did. We're like, what are we going to call ourselves? Like, Julz and Leesa, Leesa and Julz, I don't know. I'd just done a whole band project where you've spent all this time working up on a name and then the band folds. So thought about not going with another band name, but we had joked about calling the band Hussy Hicks, and we were going to, that band was supposed to be like a acoustic bluegrass band that played like, System of a Down covers and stuff. Never happened yet, but that's the only name we had, and we're like,
well,
okay,
you can still do that.
Oh yeah, we're working on the long game. Yeah. But yeah, so we just did this little tour, and like paid for a van, decked it out, and Leesa made all these she had pressed paper, like recycled paper, and stickers, and then we were just like burning CDs.
Oh, right.
And it just we were like, oh well, we've got a bit of money from playing in Dubai. This will be a fun holiday and it'll work or it won't. And it just worked so well. Like we just kept selling CDs, and back then CDs were a thing. There's $20 every time you look sideways, and
yeah.
And we're like, this might be
that
a
was
thing.
really a thing back when you could actually sell a physical product.
Yeah.
And I guess that you guys would still be selling physical products, wouldn't you?
We fortunately do. I think the sort of festival, blues and roots, folk, country scene, there's just a bit of a history of the collection, and people, it's almost about the I was there fact rather than, people go, okay, I'll get this and I'll get it signed.
They've got something to go, it's like a tangible, something they can hold.
Yeah, and even now people who, they've got a collection of the bands they've seen, say at Port Fairy or Blues Fest for 20 years.
Yeah.
So they don't want to let that nostalgia go, and they're like, well, I'm going to buy it and get you to sign it, and then I can stream it for the rest of my life guilt free.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not the same. We were lucky that we sort of started the indie band thing just at a really easy phase. It was sort of like when there was enough internet that you could contact places all around the world, send them things without sending, a big envelope with a press kit and the CD in it, so you could access everyone. But people were still buying CDs. You take a box of CDs and like $100. There's 100 CDs. They're $20. You got $2,000. Yeah. You're 22 and you got $2,000. This is the best thing in the world. Yeah.
It certainly makes the whole playing live and being able to sell a product. It makes everything financially viable.
Yeah.
It makes it worthwhile doing the travel.
Yep.
Because that can be quite expensive.
Oh gosh.
Prior to doing Hussy Hicks, you were saying that you spent some time in the UK.
Yeah.
What brought that about?
Being from the Gold Coast, every time you go to Sydney or Melbourne, people are like, why do you live on the Gold Coast? Why don't you live in Sydney or Melbourne? And I was like, well, stuff is. Why would I live in Sydney or Melbourne if I can go to one of the biggest cities in the world? So I was like, nah, I'm not going to move away from the Gold Coast because it's not big and important enough and move to Sydney or Melbourne. I'm just going to
go straight to
go to one, somewhere the other side of the world. And one of my best mates was over there at the time, and my brother Joe ended up coming with us, and we just had an absolute ball. And it was, I think, a really, really important musical development time for me, because just being exposed to so many different sounds and a European approach. And
yeah, because it's so close to Europe.
Yeah.
I guess it's just doing your trek through Europe would have been quite easy.
Yeah. We, little things would come up. You play a gig and we got offered, to play this songwriters in the round thing in Berlin. You're like, oh, we'll jump in the $300 van and drive there. And, you get there and you got put up in a beautiful house. And, it's like, this is amazing. I'm a nobody from Australia, but because I play the gig in sort of West London, someone's invited us here, and now we're staying in their mansion with all their beautiful guitars here. And I think I have enough petrol money to get home. It was just really, it was always very just grassroots, I think. And then, now we're a bit more organised, but still not that different.
Is it still as much of an adventure for you?
Yeah, a lot of the time. And if it's not, we usually don't rebook that thing for a year or so.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as anything feels like any sort of Groundhog Day, we sort of leave it and wait till we feel like we'll appreciate that part of our circuit again. You know,
It's a good plan.
Yeah.
You did a lot of, as far as from what I can remember of things, you did quite a bit of session work in London.
I did a little, yeah. I lucked into like play with some pretty monstrous people.
Yeah.
Mostly through, here's a funny little bit of musical history. Some people here, well, the Gold Coast people might remember John O'Shea, but if they don't, any of the country people might remember the band O'Shea, which is Mark and Jay.
Yeah.
When Jay came over to do her, she had a showcase for a publishing deal, which I think, you know, led to all of her publishing stuff. I was there, we knew the family, I learned a few of her songs so we could put on this great showcase. And through that, through her and that little session, I met Steve Walters, who was Kylie Minogue and George Michael and all these other amazing people's bassist. And, you know, because I liked the idea of the session world, but I never was sure if that's what I wanted to do or not. And but he called me up and asked him to come and play on his stuff, and that for me was such a, I don't know, it kind of unlocked a confidence to do what I want in a way. You're like, wow, look, you're the best guy I've ever met in the world, and you've asked me to play on your own music when you could have anyone. You know, he knows all the people, he tours the world, and he wanted me to come and play on his songs. So that made me feel a little bit justified in I guess that, you know, when you start playing, there's a lot of, you know, you're studious and you want to prove you can do this and to prove you can do that, and you want to be able to be the fastest person to pick up a chord change, and you want to be able to be the person who pulls off the tone the best, and that session world really agrees with that. You know, you want to get there and not waste anyone's time.
Yeah.
And I think I was sort of in two worlds. I was doing the band thing with both my band and another band called the Crimea, and I was flirting with the session world too. And I think doing some stuff with him, I also, this is a funny one, I got offered the gig, Tricky's gig, like from Massive Attack.
Oh.
Yeah, so he, I did this audition, and through Steve again, but through an agent, which is an interesting thing. Like, so I got this call from this agent I didn't know, and he's like, can you go and do this audition for Tricky and band? So I went, and it was just great, you know, played with the band. They're like, yep, you're amazing, you got the gig. And I was off in Italy the next week playing a guitar festival. The agent calls, it's like, yep, they want you, you've got the gig. It's, you know, it's Glastonbury, it's Reading, it's the whole European summer thing. And I was like, cool, that's really excellent, this will be heaps of fun. And I get back to London, and I'm like, rehearsals are supposed to start like tomorrow or the next day. And so I called up Wayne, who I think was the MD. I was like, hey, mate, what's happening? I heard I had this gig, but I haven't heard anything, and aren't rehearsals supposed to start tomorrow? He's like, oh, look, yeah, we really wanted you, but look, the budget on this one's really pretty tight, so we've had to fly a chick over from America.
Yeah, that makes sense. The budget's tight.
So I can fly someone in, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, I'm at this point, I'm sharing a room with my little brother, like living on chickpeas and like olive oil. Oh. I was like, my budget was too high, and so I imagine because Steve was such a top ender, he recommended me to this agent. The agents heard they really liked me. He's just like pretended that I'm like this expensive guitar player. So I missed out on that gig because I was too expensive, and I never discussed a cent. I went and bought some more, and I bought another 3 tins of chickpeas for £1.
So obviously the agent had discussed a fee. But...
yeah, not with me, but anyway. But yeah, so the session world, those guys actually called me up, and I did some other sessions for some up-and-coming people. And I didn't love it because I grew up playing music with my brothers and my best friends, and
so the connection wasn't there?
No, and these musicians, they're phenomenal. Everything sounded perfect, everything was great, but I remember a moment where you're all sitting there and everyone's going to, you know, this super expensive rehearsal studio, and, you know, bloody woohoo, who are they? What's that band called?
Blur.
Blur's downstairs, and Annie Lenx is having lunch with you. And we're in this gig, and there's just the next person that's being sent in. It's a young girl, and she was fine, you know. I'm sure she has heaps of depth and stories, but it's like the musicians had this one's not going to make it vibe, you know.
Oh.
You know, it's like, we're just here. She's the next excited thing. Get your, £500 rehearsal fee, and then we'll play this. But I don't think this one's going to make it. And I just was like, this is not what music.
You felt like part of the machine.
Yeah, you know, I sort of park my, bike. I think I rode my bike because I woke up late. And I could strap on my back, and next to the BMW and the Mercedes, and then I was like, oh, look, this is great. And I'm glad that I'm so happy that there is a world where musicians of that quality can succeed in the sort of more tangible fiscal world that most people aspire towards. But for me, I was like, oh, no, I want to go hang out with this chick now after and see what her other songs are like. And that's music for me has been friends and family. And, that's played a big part in a lot of my decisions. You know, the band I was playing with at the time was offered a huge record deal that, with, I can't remember who they ended up signing with, but they were tussling with all of them. But yeah, I ended up sort of backing away going, I don't really want to sign this, which, I was happy to keep playing, but I didn't want to commit to the whole being a sort of small cog in a big machine, even though Davey to this day is one of my favourite songwriters in the world. So there's definitely a parallel universe where I stayed on that path. And yeah.
So having seen the record company side of things, where do you sit with Hussy Hicks? Because you do everything independently.
Yeah.
Have you ever been offered record company contracts?
Yeah, different things. Not probably until we were doing well enough.
That you didn't need them?
You don't need them, that you've got to work out if it's something that's really, really going to add that much value. And a lot of the deals these days are sort of,
360 deals?
Yeah.
Where they own everything?
Yeah, we haven't really had that many of those sort of offers. There's been more just sort of combination offers, but in the end of the day, it's like we're pretty good at making albums for not that much money. So getting money fronted to then pay back out of your percentage, so you're then selling CDs that if you're lucky enough to sell them in the first place, you only make a couple of dollars when, usually...
If you own the product.
That's it. Usually after the first, say, couple of thousand are sold, there's no overhead. No overhead, and it just keeps you going, and you don't have to answer to anyone, and you can... Yeah, but we have had a few little things. We did an acoustic release with a German label, which was nice and low key, but that was mostly because it was based around a tour. And so basically you could do that tour, but you needed to have an album with that label because they played enough dates and they knew that would be how they made a lot of the money back. So that ended up being really nice. It was with a bunch of acoustic guitar sort of virtuosos, and so we got to play to a whole bunch of different theatres and Eastern European sections and stuff. So yeah. We're not anti anything, it's just not...
It's just, it's one of those things, the deal has to work in your favour, I guess, that's the thing, and knowing when the deal does. As opposed to being young and going, I'll sign anything. Yeah,
and having had enough of those moments where the reality, we know how to do what we do. We could probably do much better under the watchful eye of someone else, but we just haven't had anyone who really... we felt would take it to places that were that important. Just jumping on with an agency or a record company for the sake of it and hoping for the best. It's
at the moment, I guess you guys have had so much success anyway, and like you say, if you find a place that's not working for you, you can go, okay, we won't go back there. I guess you have pretty autonomous control over what you do, when you do it, how you do it. That's got to be a pretty liberating thing.
It's pretty awesome. Like, for instance, we're going to go and play in a baby reindeer farm in Alaska. Leesa found that gig. She doesn't often step up for booking gigs, but we're going to make no money, but we're going to be sitting in a baby reindeer pen playing songs in Alaska. So that's probably not something that the agent would negotiate for you because, 10% of...
nothing.
Of cuddles from baby reindeers is a hard thing to quantify.
So it's back on the adventure trail.
Yeah, and that's something we've really... when we started going back, because our first ever tour was in America. Mm-hmm. And we didn't really start going back to there with much sort of touring ferocity until 2018, 19. And then obviously COVID shut everything down. But we really wanted to make a point of going, if we're going to go on tour Colorado and Alaska and all these places that, you know, where you're just one of a million bands, like we can't expect to get the same fees and a comm and backline and flights that we get in Australia because we're nobodies. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure we can play the best gigs we can, and we want to make sure we, you know, cherish every experience. It's like, I'm not too scared to sleep like in a promoter's dungeon if it means like we get to go hiking in Colorado the next day. And we literally took a tent on that first trip when we went back to the American market because we didn't know if anyone would come to any gigs, and we didn't want to be, you know, beholden to taking out a bank loan to tour because we've always made money from touring, like, and maybe we'd be more successful if we'd splashed out and spent heaps more on promotion and had a loss for a few years. I don't know, but we also may have given up. But yeah, so we really made a commitment to making sure if we're touring, we're doing it like when we were 20, like, oh wow, we're in North Carolina, let's go hiking up to this river and look for bears and have campfires and just do all the things that, you know, don't mean just going from
town to town, seeing the inside of a motel room, going to the next town, seeing the inside of a venue, inside of a motel room.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, baby reindeers and muskox. We're doing a muskox farm too.
So have you been to Alaska before?
We have. It was another one of these things where we got off at a festival and the fee was never going to cover
the cost
of getting there. But we're like, well, it's a festival, and our friend Christy Lee was playing, Michael Franti was playing, who would, you know, jam with a fair bit, Brandy Carlisle, who we loved, was playing. And we're like, well, we're not going to get to go to Alaska and be given money in any other way, so let's just take this and then just see what any other gigs we can get. And in Alaska, because it's so remote, there's lots of little bar gigs, and once people like you, they just open up and people will travel up and down. And we were just lucky that, you know, because the festival had, you know, Christy Lee and us, like we played our set, we played with Christy Lee, you know, I jumped up and played with Franti, and we played our next day set and everyone came because we'd sort of got enough excitement. And then because we're road warriors, we're like, okay, we'll be over, if anyone wants to try and decipher a bad Australian accent, we'll be at the merch tent after this. And we sold, like, I think more CDs than anyone up to that point on that first, and we paid for the whole trip. So, but if we hadn't have had that adventure sense of going, I don't care, let's
do it, you wouldn't have,
we wouldn't have had that. And then so after that, we've been back 3 or 4 times, and it's beautiful and wonderful, and we're going back to play that festival again this year.
Tell me what your experience of playing with Phil Emmanuel was like.
Oh, fantastic. Like, it was the perfect time in my life to play with him. I was, you know, that first, you know, little run where I went and learned some Shadows tunes and met Wazza and Mills. So I think I stopped playing with him just about when I moved to London, so about 22, 23. So I was just at the peak of wanting to learn everything you could. And
I learned a lot because we were working 5 or 6 nights a week, and you can't help but stand on a stage and witness what he was capable of doing and not learn from it.
No, it was the most intense, you know, musical degree you could have. I remember him while we were sitting in like somewhere near Marrickville, Balmain area. And he's like, you know, that Rondo alla Turca song. He's like, we should put a harmony on this. And I was like, okay. Okay, cool. You know, like we played it like 3 times and probably got it up to about 62% speed.
Oh man.
And then we go straight over to like Hornsby, and we're on the radio, and he starts talking. He's like, yeah, we've been working on... I'm like, please don't. We've been working on this thing, and you're like, you're kidding, mate. We got to like 62% speed like an hour ago. And it's like, let's play it. And you're like, cool, hang on, keep up. And
yeah, I remember that was the biggest thing for me. My right hand was, when I first started working with, was pretty crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could play a lot of stuff because my legato skills were quite good.
Yeah.
playing with Phil, it's like it's you've got to have a good right hand.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's picked and it's super fast. It took me probably, I mean, you talk about doing it afternoon. It probably took me 6 months or so to get up to speed.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I was up to speed, and I had been playing with him for a while by then. So, that was the intensity.
It is a real kick up your butt.
I remember the first.
It makes you work really hard at it, doesn't it?
First time he sort of just changed my whole right hand was on that first trip when I was literally like, oh, can I get time off school to go to Sawtell and play with Phil Emmanuel? Because unless it's a weird like crazy murderer who just knows what to say, then I think that's what's happening. And we're playing, it might have been like one of those acoustic town hall shuffle or one of those ones.
Scottish Irish medley or
one of those that he plays
things.
with Tommy on blistering rhythm, and because I was just sort of going down upstrum as you just keep up, don't think anything of it. You're a child. It's like, nah, all down strokes. Okay, right. So I'm just gonna have to like double speed, and then it opens you up because you're like, all of a sudden you're like, well, I got all the upstrokes now. I can do what I like with, and that there's little things like that just changed everything. But yeah, right hand was definitely something.
Yeah, it's just I found that was my weak spot, and it probably still is because it's.
You got a pretty monstrous left hand though. That has a problem. You could also flip it and say it's my strength. It's like you go, boo.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of what you work out is that ship is like I'm never going to be the best technical player in the world. I was probably technically better and faster 20 years ago, but because I was playing with Phil, I was playing all the gypsy stuff and doing all that repertoire. And if you don't play that repertoire, as much as you might have been able to, you're not at speed. It's like a runner who hasn't run.
No.
But so
it's like being an extreme athlete in some ways, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
You've got to train for that stuff.
Which means you've got to, I guess, like I fell into the guitar scene. I was playing like big guitar festivals in Europe, just because I was introduced to Europe through Phil.
But you've got the skill. You had the skills. I mean, you still have the skills.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that probably works in your favour now is, and probably did back then too, is you do have a unique style.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that everybody's got to try and remember. It's you don't necessarily, while you might admire these amazing guitar heroes, you're never going to be them. You can only be you.
No, and getting sort of exposed to that world, I guess, in that whole sort of time in London was pretty formative. And you're like, wow, over here there's a festival and there's 1,000 people playing Django Reinhardt tunes pretty well. Here's another festival and everyone's playing Chet Tommy style tunes pretty well. Here's another festival where everyone's like blazing somewhere between, Gary Moore and Yngwie Malmsteen pretty well. But you're like, so where do you fit in? Where do you fit in? Like I guess the natural trajectory for me would have been probably to play a bit more of your boom chick stuff and really solidify that and tour with an acoustic guitar, because that's it's a pretty great world, and that was sort of the world I was introduced to. But I just ended up I ended up finding that I like the band vibe and the songwriting vibe and yeah, just playing the way I sort of play, and I still try and play well. That's
absolutely.
It's not like I'm not trying to play well or push things in different ways, but I didn't naturally fall into any one of the seeds. Like you go watch Blues on Broadbeach last week. There's so many great blues players. That again, I could have fallen into that scene. I was playing blues and Gary. I could play the whole Still Got the Blues album when I was 12. Missing some of those key licks. We all know which ones they are. Guitar players, but pretty well. Like I could fake it to a bunch of people.
You play incredibly well.
But then didn't end up being the sound that kept my ears chasing. So now I can sort of. So sit in with a country band and be okay. I can sit in with a blues band and be okay, and sit in with, But
do you find, for you, it's more what inspires you is more the song rather than the actual playing, the actual musical technicalities of it?
Yeah, look, it's as any guitar playing kid, like there's always going to be someone does something you're like, whoa, how'd they do that? Can I do that or not? And that's sort of like my sports side. Like I like sport too, and being able to try and be the fastest or the person who can hold the note for the longest. That's all exciting too. But I reckon for all the guitar festivals I played, the guitarists the bulk of guitar players that touched me the most, and this is after playing many, many guitar festivals, was probably the KMO songwriting festival. There's like a boat, and it's all songwriters, and you got like, John Prine and all these people. Trying to remember who was on the boat now, but I think Lucinda Williams. But yeah, all these people and their guitarists are all so subtle, but so perfect.
Yeah,
and I'm like, it's harder sometimes to play something that fits that well and lifts a song in a certain way, and just culminates in the part where the singer comes back in. You're like, wow, this whole thing has just been set up magically, and the guitar.
So it's more about the art of music than the stealth of playing fast.
Yeah, well, I'd say that I just like a bit of both.
A bit of both.
A bit of both.
You play acoustic and electric. I know you have a fond love of the Telecaster, and you've got a nice Strat as well.
I do.
You played Strat for a long time. You got a nice old Telecaster that got damaged in the flood down in Lismore.
The one that got damaged was my JV Squire. I have a nice old telly too.
So the telly got saved.
Just by dumb luck, I chucked the gig because we're in Lismore. You have floods, and I'd been through one of the last minor floods in the past and had to carry my guitars out because we always take the vehicles out.
Yeah.
And you got to wade through a bit of water. So I was like, I'll take out what we need for the gig and put it in the car just to save me walking through later.
Yeah.
And just by a bit more dumb luck, because we were putting everything up, I have just like a 70s Music Master bass and a 66 Mustang guitar. And because they've got flimsy old cases, I was like, oh, this is going to be annoying to put up. And I had my gigging guitar on my back. I sort of grabbed both of them. And Lisa's like, what are you doing? You don't think we're going to have to worry about that, do you? And I was like, no, but I had free hands. And like basically the only things that weren't completely destroyed were in that van. So it was the gigging rig. But yeah,
So for those people who are listening, there was in Lismore a massive,
biblical
biblical proportion flood, because you got a house down there that it's up on poles, and it's like, how high off the ground is it?
It's 3.2 metres off the ground.
3.2 metres off the ground.
Yeah, and that's where the studio has.
So it's
was
basically because it is it's flood prone area.
Yeah.
So it's way off the ground. So if the flood comes, it's generally pretty safe.
Hose out, go back, get your car from the hill, walk your guitars through the puddle.
So you had a flood. What year was it?
It was 22.
22. Gee, that's
Feb 28 to be exact. Yeah.
fair. Oh wow.
Yeah.
And the floodwaters went way above the roof.
Yeah.
Of your place.
Yeah, not the ceiling, the roof.
Yeah, above the roof.
Yeah. So we had, and if you live in the flood area, you know where all the markers are. Like 74 would have been here. Maybe there was something in 1890 that might have gone there. So we've just gone cool, put all the studio stuff up. Guitars against the ceiling, You're like even allowing another metre for wild and crazy, but it went sort of 2.2 metres higher than anything in whitefella history. So we were all caught unawares.
So, I mean, that would have been quite devastating because obviously you would have had a lot of recording stuff and...
Yep, everything was in there.
Everything?
Yeah.
Man.
But I got to say, if anyone goes through a flood, don't throw things away. It's amazing what can be repaired. Paul up at Miami, he saved things like that had 8-out light pipes and things you just would never imagine would dry out. Like I knew maybe the old valve amps might dry out, but yeah, it's amazing what you can dry out with the right sort of.
So you managed to salvage some stuff.
We did salvage some stuff. Some is now like a bit more flood toned, but it's salvaged, and other things just. Microphones don't like floods.
No.
Speakers don't like floods much.
No.
Although I still have the original, because, we used to backline all the time and I have a silver-faced twin, I got between Mark Amwatt's amps, Mark, and Paul, my Music Man 212 HD that Phil got for me to play in the band because I'm going to need a louder amp. That went completely under. They got all the amp section working and I was going to have to take the speakers up to, be recone because I tested them and they were reading like 72 ohms or something.
Oh, okay.
And because,
just basically do a recone job or?
Yeah, well, that's initially what I was planning to do, but there's a lot to do after your whole house goes under, and it took a few months, and then I tested them again, and they're at 8 ohms. So I haven't
Over
replaced
time,
them. Yeah,
they
they just
dried
dried out. So I haven't taken them on the road or relied on them yet, but I've left them in there now. And
You've got to wonder if there's any crap in the voice coils.
there's all sorts of crap in the voice. It sound, it's slightly different sounding, but it's, everyone's always chasing a swampy tone, and I reckon I'm getting closer.
A swampy tone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you here when the flood happened, or were you away on tour?
No, we were here. We were there. We were in that.
Oh, because you actually
in the building. Yeah.
Did you have to get rescued off the roof? Is that?
I was actually under a roof holding the neighbour up when we got rescued. Leesa was on our roof coordinating help because there was no help coming. So yeah, it was.
Wow.
It was quite the ordeal.
Wow.
But yeah, no, I ended up paddling. We only had one decent floating thing, so I paddled upstream because our neighbour was 87, and I knew he was probably in a bit of trouble.
Oh wow.
So yeah, we did the whole flood thing pretty intently, and the biggest bummer for me is we just built like everything in all the spaces. Like I've spent my whole life building portable recording studios. Everywhere you go, let's set up a studio and record. Let's set up, and it was finally
You had somewhere you
here
could
it
call
all
home.
is.
It was just
Here's
permanently
everything.
set up.
And I know the sound of these speakers. I've got the lovely bookshelf Bose when you really want to feel happy about it. I've got the sort of slightly bassy Harman Kardons in the bedroom over there, so you can check if you're too boomy, and you just know the speed.
Yeah.
That's probably the thing I feel like was hardest to get back, and I still haven't got it back, is having that confidence in your mix that you have from knowing a room so well.
Well, yeah.
So, and I actually just pulled in a whole bunch of the gear this week. And rather than having it permanently set up, you're always like, okay, keep it ready to pull out. And so basically build the studio every time again.
Wow. Yeah, that's got to play on your mind now every time you see the weather turning bad. Because we had a little period earlier this year where it looked like we were going to get flooded again.
Yeah. Yeah, we went the full evacuate that time. We're like everything out, all the musical gear.
Wow.
Yeah, up to the hill, and we got out because we're like, we got gigs.
Yep.
I'm not going to sit here. We've stayed here. We've done the worst flood in history. You can't keep the water. You can't save anything. If it's coming up, it's coming up.
Yeah.
So we just took everything up the hill. We had to leave like 2 days early and stay in port to get under the storm because we're like,
Wow.
those roads can all go under.
Yeah.
I mean, today the Taree Highway's under. So, you get pretty good at weather watching when you live in Lismore.
Yeah.
Get ahead of a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had to name a highlight of all the things that you've done, something you could go, wow, or that one thing was, I never thought I'd ever do anything like that.
The gig that pops into mind, wasn't the biggest gig we've ever played or anything, but we actually played just a show probably 10 years ago in Rome, in the Piazza Santa Maria Trastevere, which is this big old piazza. It's been there for, my history's not great, but I'm going to say a lot of years. And they just had this, it was a big free concert and a big stage set up, and you're just sitting there and, because I was playing the cajon, it was a trio gig with our friend Raf. And I remember getting sort of first song in, I was trying a bit more of this, a bit more of that sonically, and then just going, right, you got to enjoy this. Like, here you are, playing a bunch of songs that no one knows. You're just a bunch of rat bags from, Northern Rivers and the Goldie, and you're sitting there and you're hearing the sounds of your silly little songs bouncing off these like 2,000-year-old walls, and we had a really nice response. And that gig, just that moment, and the real, I think that gig was one I really made sure I appreciated during the show. And I do try now, if you
Be in the moment.
Yeah, I sort of have a 2 to 3 song rule. If you haven't got the sound right in the first 2 songs, right, just the gig is going, make these sounds, whatever they are, sound as good as you can, and that served me pretty well. But for enjoyment's sake, it means you end up with some weird sounding gigs. But
Conversely, is there a moment or a decision that you've made along the way that you could say, I wish that hadn't happened, or I wish I hadn't made that decision, or something that you can say, okay,
With the benefit of hindsight.
Well, there's a lesson learned there, and that's something that you wouldn't do again.
If I was 14 years old and B.B. King called me on the phone again, I wouldn't say, yeah, I'm playing in Brisbane too. I would have just said, can I come to your gig? Because I reckon since he had me on the phone, he would have let me come to the gig, and that would have been a bit smarter. Now that I know about things like, band guest lists and backstage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you had a phone call from B.B. King?
I did, as a young child. Yep. And I think I went and played at the Morrison Hotel with Joe and Bertie in Brisbane. He's like, I'd love to see you play. I'm like, oh, I'm playing at the Morrison Hotel till like midnight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was something I'd do differently if I had my time over.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I slightly got sidetracked before talking about guitars and the floods. You've got a nice, was it a 52 telly?
It's not a 52 telly, no.
Oh.
No, it's
some sort of...
let's say it's a 59 reissue.
Ah, fair enough.
No, it's a 59 telly, it is. But fortunately, it looks like two other of my guitars, so if you're going to steal it, you'll have to get the right one. Yeah.
You play acoustic and electric. Do you have a preference between the two?
Depends on the song.
Oh.
Like I was always an electric guitar player from my teen years, and I was much better at that. And then I think just from having to play my brother Joe and I did hundreds of gigs, just acoustic and bass. Mm-hmm. So I developed a bit of a different style, trying to hold it all together, because I guess I was the rhythm and he,
I mean, but an acoustic guitar is a different animal to an electric.
Totally different. But when I came back to electric, I found there was, I came back to Australia and I was playing mostly electric gigs again, and I found that my playing had changed, and I missed some of the attack of the acoustic. And so
it depends, like you say.
Totally depends on the song. I never do a gig without the acoustic guitar there.
Yep.
Unless I'm playing I'll play with Becky Cole and just play the electric for that gig. But if it's one of our shows like this, I can play a whole Hussy set without an electric, but I can't play it without an acoustic.
Fair enough. When you're travelling and touring, how many guitars do you carry with you?
Oh, that's, if we're playing in Broady or Byron, I fill the van. But when we're going overseas, it's, usually, baggage allowances are a big thing.
Yeah.
When you're an
it's an expensive thing and then you also got the worry of is your guitar going to get, have you ever had a guitar damaged?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think everyone who travels around the world is going to get a guitar smashed, and I've had all sorts of damage. My main maton that Andy Allen in the custom shop made for me, I think the first trip I took it on, it got A-split, and the second trip it was completely smashed and had to be rebuilt.
Wow.
Just totally mistreated but I just feel like that's something that, and I've seen people do it in the most hardcore back-breaking cases, and I've seen it happen in flimsy soft cases. So I just think you just have to let go of that. If you don't want a guitar to get smashed, don't take it anywhere, but don't leave it in Lismore. But but I usually take
don't leave it in Lismore.
If we're touring, like last year was probably a good example. It was mostly sort of trio format, which is me on the acoustic and the cajon. But a few band gigs, so I had to bring an electric as well, and you get charged per piece. Like we've got.
So you have a bag that'll hold several guitars in one bag.
Funnily enough, I didn't, but we worked out I was going to order one. There's a guy out in Melbourne who makes really good ones, and
because there are a few cases around now where you can put an acoustic and two electrics, and they're making them in such a way that they come under the weight limit.
Yeah, so basically we're going in like a day, and I hadn't come up with a case, and I was like, just gaff it together, and Lisa's just bunged out a sewing machine and grabs. I was so impressed. I'll try and find you a photo of this creation. She basically we got my electric and acoustic guitar that were the closest in shape.
Yep.
And she just made up a pattern, and we stole the zipper off like a cheap half-size acoustic guitar that was at Mum and Dad's. The case was rotting, and we're like,
Oh, okay.
No one's used this for years. Chop that off, and she made me a little 2-in-1 case that weighed nothing. It was literally
Oh, wow.
2 old curtains and a zip, and then we taped the guitars as well for the Hope. But yeah.
So you got away with the one case.
Yeah, and Leesa travels with a mini Maton, which you can get on board the plane, especially if you say it's a tenor ukulele. Because it seems that people don't know the difference, but the word ukulele is okay, but the word guitar's not.
Yeah.
Please don't share this worldwide.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so that helps. So we've always got 2 guitars, and if I have to bring another one, I'll bring another. Or a lot of the years when we were going, say, from Europe to America, I would, if we're only doing like a couple of electric shows, you end up, before there was like Wise and all these ways of transferring money easily, you'd end up at the end of a tour with all this cash, and then you take it home and, you'd ring around and have to drive to Pacific Fair at Christmas to change it and get a bad rate. So I often would like buy a Strat or a Telly in America.
Oh, okay.
Just because, you look around for a day or two and
you find a relatively cheap one.
Find something good you like, and generally, so, for the money you'd spend there, you got a guitar for the tour, and when you come home to exchange it, the guitar was back then worth more here. So not only do you get a free guitar
I
for
can
the tour,
remember being in America in 2000.
Yep.
And I could buy a Telecaster, I think it was a nice high-end telly, for about $600 in America. In Australia, they were $3,500.
Yeah, so there's perfect example for it.
How can they justify that price difference? Anyway, but...
No. Well, yeah, I don't know, and I was reaping all the benefits.
You've got to work out ways to make things economically viable. And that's just another way of doing it.
Yep, yeah, that saved us a few times.
Have you got anything new coming up that's that people should know about?
Well, we released a new studio album last year, Swimming in Uncertainty, and then we released a new live album just last month.
Oh, okay.
Which was the Blues Fest desk tapes, because we had just a bunch of live recordings from the years at Blues Fest. So that's the newest thing that's out at the moment, but we've now got sort of the next 6 months to spend some time. We're going to be in the south of France at our friend's studio for a bit and try and nut out some new album stuff. But
so going to the south of France to record, any gigging as well, or was it just for the purpose of recording?
Gigging as well, but because our friend Raf's based there, and we've made a lot of music together over the years. It's very handy because we can record, and then there's just some nice shows, and because we've done it for a few years now, there's just lovely little gigs we can play. And yeah.
I guess when are you heading over to do that?
I'm going to spend July through September in Europe and Alaska.
So in the south of France in summer?
Yeah, it's horrible, eh? Yeah, we have made it.
Well, it's our winter here, so it's a good time to get away.
Yeah.
Not that it gets that cold here.
It doesn't get that cold, no.
No. What's the 5 to 10 year plan for Julz Parker?
This is a question I'm not very good at and never have, but I would say more of the same. Mm-hmm. I'd just like to keep doing what we're doing and, letting the crappy bits drop away and leaning into the better bits. That's sort of all we've ever done, and I don't have any need for anything to change. Just hopefully keep getting better at what we do and keep finding more little pockets and music scenes that like what we do enough that they'll have us along to their gigs. And yeah.
So you were saying you do gigs with Becky Cole. Is there anybody else that you lend your guitar skills to?
Not so much. Especially when we had the studio there, I'd jump on a few things, but I haven't, really done a lot of extra. I guess I played with our friend Anya Tyrrell last week, and just friends, basically. If a friend needs some guitar playing, then we'll do it, or some harmony vocals, we'll do it. Our friend Christy Lee in America is probably one of our collaborators we most end up doing stuff with.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just fell in with Beck a few years ago, and I ended up producing her Lioness album, and she's just great because she understands that we do our other thing, and she's like, "Can you do this gig? Great. Can you not? Fine." So,
When you say you produced an album, How did that come about, and what was your job as a producer?
I always say the funny thing is that, like, everyone knows how to capture sounds and has ideas. Like, a big part of producing an album is producing it in time and on budget and making sure it all gets done. Making sure that when you open up the sessions the next day, the person who's playing has a well-edited, version of the song that sounds good to play to, so it's all enjoyable. But yeah, so she asked me to do it, which was pretty big honour because she's she's very successful.
Where was that done at?
We did the band tracking at Mixmasters in Adelaide.
Okay, yeah, Mick Wordley's place.
Yeah, he was great. Really, really great guy to work with.
Great studio too.
Yeah, no, but the great studio, and he's just got so much knowledge. So having him there engineering was just a blessing. And then we did some stuff here at Love Street, some overdubs, and then we actually did a fair few percussion and vocal overdubs down at, the old Pines studio before it was even renovated into a better, space. But yeah, so that was there. But yeah, I think my job was
making sure that the best performances were delivered in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah, and I think not for me. My approach is usually try not to get in the way, especially with such a experienced artist as Beck is, she has a great band. She's performed thousands of shows. If you can make it comfortable and not get in the way, then you can access the nuance of what you get from thousands of shows. Try and not get in the way is sort of what I do, and that's hopefully all the things you do where you're thinking and working and twiddling knobs and bringing up other parts and pulling things in and going, that needs to come down a decibel, means that when everyone's performing, they're just not thinking. And
they just got to perform at their best.
And just working out when something's worth moving on or digging into. You can get so caught on something that's not going to make any difference in the end.
Yeah.
It's for me, a lot of producing is making sure that the things you're doing are moving in a logical way and using the time that you have the best you can.
Yeah. Is it when you're doing the Hussy Hicks stuff, how do you draw the line between being a producer and between being the musician?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've found this over the years many times. It's like you have to... I love putting down as much live as possible, especially when we're doing Hussy Hicks stuff. The last few albums we've had Raphael sort of also wearing a producer hat, which is really great because it means I can sort of step in and out and in different parts. But that's, a guitar player's always got a better solo up their sleeve in their mind. So you have to... I really love to track. Again, we're a live band, so to get out of the way, try and get the song, make it fun, play it a few times all together, capture everything. And if it's not happening, step away, go play some table tennis, come into a different song. And often I find, for that, then I won't have to, you'll go, that take, maybe it's not the guitar take I would have written and laboured over for 5 years, but that sits really well and that saves a bit of time. And then I guess with the last album, there was a few things that I just, ended up piecing together a bit more. And yeah, it's again, find a song structure, find the sounds you like, and then just try and, that's when you have to be like, okay, I need to perform something, so I need to make sure that I'm not clipping this mic, and I need to make sure that...
So, because you want to be performing and not thinking about technical aspects.
Yeah, and so we actually finished a lot of the last album we had a recording truck called Derek, which solved our studio...
Derek?
Yeah, Derek the truck, for obvious reasons for Slide fans. But yeah, so just finding a comfortable place. And it's weird, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of my singing, but I'm comfortable enough with it that I can usually put down a take in a couple of takes, and it's never going to sound like Whitney Houston. So as long as I'm sort of telling the story of the song, or if it's a harmony, as long as I'm blending and hitting the right notes, then that's where you sort of go, okay, unconfident singer, or over-enthusiastic guitar player. Look, that part will do for now, and if you've got time to go back if you don't like it, but just let it sit, and you end up going, oh, actually no, that was step away.
It's a funny thing how you can do that, how in the moment you're going, oh, and if you let some space happen between it and you come back and listen to it, you can go, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds good. All it actually took was, sitting it within the track sonically. And that's one of my most important rules if I'm wearing a producer hat, or any time I'm in the studio really, but if I'm wearing the producer hat, I want everyone to be playing music like it sounds good in their head. Nothing upsets me more, and in a lot of the years of going into sessions, you get there and it's like, this sounds like crap. I know that it's not mixed, but what, you want me to just put down a guitar part and come up with something that plays with this song, and what you've given me, it's a mess. How do I know what sonically this track needs if you're just going to fix it later? And I think there's a lot of fix it in the mix people still out there, and I just,
Which I guess is one of those things, like you say, if you can track as much stuff as you can live, if everybody's playing together and it's syncing, you can feel that when it's working.
Yeah, and it might be like, and someone might think, we really stuffed that up. That line, I got racy or something. And you're like, that whole take felt great, let's just leave it. And then you get back in there later, you bring up the session, and you're like, oh, actually, that whole thing sat great. There's a tiny bit too much push and pull on my overexcited guitar bit. Chop, chop, push it back a tiny bit. You're like,
it's done.
Done. And it's like, cool, we could have spent 7 more hours and hated the band by the time we'd finished because we're all just overthinking it, when it's like, that was a 99% good track.
Yeah.
But knowing when to keep pushing and when you can give up. And
so is your music available on streaming services?
Mostly. The last studio album is now, but for the last 2 albums, this live one and the last studio album, Swimming in Uncertainty, we made a very conscious decision not to release it to streaming.
Okay.
At release time. It went well for us because in both cases we charted when we never have before.
When you say charted, how does that work? How does the charted in Australia charted?
Yeah, just in Australia. But, for instance, the last one, we funneled a lot of people through Bandcamp, and then, you have the live sales and then online sales. And because rather than people, everyone's like, pre-save, jump on this, like me on Spotify. And we have the most beautiful and loyal supporting fan base. And when you release an album, you my sort of idea is everyone wants to help in one way or another.
Yeah.
But you've only sort of got one call to action. And if we've got a new album, go listen to it on Spotify, they will. And that's great. They get to hear the album and feel like they've done what you said. They've gone to your link tree and they've picked Spotify. Great. And that off it goes, and they play through your album, and then Taylor Swift comes on after because the algorithm said so. And we just found that, I love streaming as a concept, as an option, but we just found that we did it with the last album, and we got everyone to either pre-buy it, and then we put like 1 track out a month to streaming, which was great because it kept us sort of just ticking over. Our streaming numbers are horrible. We're probably our notoriety to streaming numbers are like, we don't punch high in that at all, but it sort of worked well for us, just sending people other places, and then,
So when you say you're charting, is the way the charts are worked out, are they paying attention to... Well, I have no concept. I know it used to be a case of people buying, like back in the day when you're selling physical product.
Yeah.
And that was the way it was judged. But now...
It's a mix of everything, and that's why there's, often there'll be like 4 Morgan Wallen albums or whatever his name is, in the whole top 40 because they're just
people
being
streaming constantly.
But if there's enough streaming, like streaming counts for X amounts. A physical sale counts for X amounts. A download counts for X amounts. Like with the live album, we got in the top 10 in the country for all, including your Taylor Swifts and that, because no one downloads Taylor Swift. Why would they bother?
Yeah.
But because we put it all through Bandcamp and that's all registered with SoundScan or whatever, it gets registered behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then, for instance, we played Blues on Broadbeach last week, and that because they've got a proper official shop, all of that gets
recognised.
registered as long
okay.
as you've registered the album with ARIA to start with.
Yes.
And they know to look for your sales. Then they'll go, oh, cool, you sold, a couple of hundred CDs and, bunch of vinyl and there was this many downloads. You get a number.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't compete streaming-wise. Like, if we just put an album out streaming, it's never going to blip.
How do you find festivals in Australia compared to doing stuff overseas? Is the festival circuit quite a good and vibrant thing here?
100 of them. It's been our lifeblood for the last 20 years almost. It's so great. Festival scene overseas is also so great. Like, I'm just an absolute festival pig. I love them. I'd do 50 festivals a year if I had my choice. But
do you get to play all of the ones here, or is it? Because I'd imagine happening at different times, and you're overseas quite a lot.
Yeah,
there'd be a few that you'd miss out on.
Yeah, but we do try and, obviously there's a few festivals in July, August. Particularly July, because we haven't been here for July for a while, that have wanted us to play, and so we maybe will try and be home next year and do a few July festivals. But also I think the fact that we go away has played in our favour too, because if we're here the whole time, then you can't play every year anyway. A lot of festivals,
yeah,
and then because we're away a lot of the time, we usually try and do one run of all the venues around the country, maybe two, but one sort of ticketed run around the country and selected festivals within the time we're home, and that sort of means that we can, usually make the event special enough that people will come out and buy tickets.
In the early days, was it easy to get onto a festival lineup? I'd imagine it's a lot easier for you now.
Yeah, it's funny, like.
But I was just wondering, what was it like starting out trying to get onto a festival lineup?
Oh yeah, it's not. There's definitely like a sort of club that you sort of end up being part of.
Oh, okay.
You go and play at a festival, and there's people who go to festivals and book festivals, are at the festival, and they see you play, and they see you put on a good show, so they'll be like, well, I do a festival too.
You should come and play at my festival.
The amount of people, we were just here at Broady this week, and I ran into Justin from Port Fairy. Like, festival people go to festivals, so
okay.
It's kind of like, if you can't, like, getting that first, everyone's like, put in an application, and eventually one of them comes back and says, we'll take you. Mm-hmm. We were very lucky. It was a weird, cruel twist of fate that turned into a blessing. We were going to play in China and Italy at a guitar festival. Our very first album had just was coming out. And we were just going to go and play in Broome at one of these bar gigs for a month. Mm-hmm. It was like, great, we'll play for a month, that'll pay for our ticket, and then we'll go and do this Hussy Hicks band tour launch of, this original project. And about 2 weeks before that was supposed to happen, it got pulled. I think they worked out they could get a local band cheaper and no flights and no accom, and it was a double booking. But because, and we had already been given a van to like blog about and drive from like Sydney to Darwin. But we were just, and so we've now got like, to get to Darwin, to drop this van off, we've got to make enough money to go to China and and Italy, and we got no gigs. But I just hustled. I spent like 2 weeks on the phone, and we had enough friends like, Marshall and the Fro, mm-hmm. and Dallas Frasker at that time. They were our friends, and they were just a little bit further into the Aussie music scene than we were. So, and I was just like, help, who do we call in this area? Who puts on a gig here? And we went from, the Potbelly in Canberra to like somewhere in Esperance. We ended up putting together this tour, and we picked up our CDs on the 14th of Feb, played in Canberra, we played everywhere, anywhere that would have us, but it was all original music under the strength of that. It was,
Yep.
And we ended up, because we were passing, we got in touch with the Nanup Music Festival. Mm-hmm. And we're like, hey, we've got this like travel blog van thing, and we're passing anyway. If you have any spots, we'd love to play. No, it's probably a long shot. And of course, Phaedra, who was the festival director, she said, yeah, sorry, it's all booked. And then I think 2 days later, she's like, actually, you might be able to open up this 2 slots. And and we did a slot I can't remember both stages, but I know the second one was like the pub stage at 10:30 at night. So everyone's leaving the main arena. And we just had one of those killer sets.
Right spot, right time.
Yeah, we just, it's just the two of us. I don't even know if we had the cajon back then or if it was just stand-up guitar playing. But we managed to just win over that crew and get invited back. And then by the time you get invited back, there's a bit of a little buzz about you being able to put on a decent live show, and then all the other festival people talk to each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like we lucked in. That was just a bit of dumb luck. But I do also, like, one of my main feelings about life is if you back yourself to do something you want to do, you get rewarded. But we constantly get distracted by fear and, like we could very easily have just gone and played 3 or 4 weeks in a bar and been 4 weeks better at being a bar band. But instead we went and played this whole run of shows, sold more CDs than, we made more money than if we'd just done the bar gig, but all of a sudden that's what you're doing now. And if someone sees you, that's what you get rebooked for. Like the amount of people are like, I'm doing this, but I really want to do that. It's like, well, until you do that, that's what you're going to get
So you've got to be
for.
careful about what you choose to do.
Yeah.
Because it reinforces the path that you're on.
Yeah, you get better at doing that and people want to see you do that. And it's very hard because music, there's always going to be dangling carrots of gigs that seem like a safer bet.
I guess that's one of the reasons why I was curious about the whole signing a record contract thing.
Yeah.
Because it's a path that it would seem, only works for a small percentage of people.
Yep. Well, and also, I guess, Leesa did all that when she was like 15, 16. She had like ABC country deals and I can't remember who else publishing, but, all the names that we know. And, so, and she found that felt a bit tumble-turned by all that stuff. So neither of us were racing for that to be our way. And I was always just a bit renegade. Like I always found, like the first tour we ever did together in America, like I had a few gigs and the rest we got from like a website that I found from when I was hitchhiking around America. These guys are like punk guys. And they're like, you got to check out this website. It's byofl.org. Like book your own fucking life. And
What a great name.
It was great.
Book your own fucking life.
And so we just were emailing everyone and just like, it's just, we've been lucky that we've sort of thrown our hat into a few rings and the doors have kept sort of slowly opening in ways that made us happy. But
is there any particular country that you would prefer, that you feel is more accepting of what you do? I know you like going through Europe a bit. You go through America, you're doing Alaska.
Yeah.
Have you been to Canada?
We did our first couple of Canadian shows last summer. We did the Mariposa Folk Festival and the Ottawa Blues Fest, and that was fantastic. Yeah, they're a pretty great live music culture.
What about NZ?
Have not done as much as we should have, really. There, we've done a couple of trips and probably need to get back there because, again, great music supporters.
They are great. I mean, I find it's, whether I'm mistaken or not, but it would seem to me that most of the music supporters that go out and see live music on the Gold Coast are mostly Kiwis. They seem to be a much bigger supporter of live music than Australians are.
Yeah.
Which is an odd thing to say. But anyway, festival-wise, what do you think's the biggest one that you've ever done?
I will just circle back to the last question because I reckon rather than saying where is best, there is definitely different responses from different countries.
Oh, okay.
They can be totally positive, but quick anecdote, the first time we went from an Italian festival, like where people are like, mamma mia, I could just feel like the music is flowing from your feet and I'm crying and you're amazing. We played a gig in a guitar venue in Germany and playing and everyone's dead silent. And, we've come from sort of the raucous Australian scene where people usually let you know pretty early if they're into it. And we finished the gig and they're like, we walk to the side of the stage and we're like, they hate us. Absolutely hate us. And the promoter's like, are you gonna play an encore? I'm like, do they want us to? It's like, yes, they haven't stopped clapping. And so you're like, oh, okay, they're polite, but they did like us. And we went back out and we, again, had a merch line of everyone in the crowd. But
wow.
Just switching your head.
So people, like the cultural response is different?
Yeah, they've got some crowds, and which I find for our playing is great because sometimes you go bull at a gate, like you got to win over a bunch of noisy people in your head. And then you're like, 3 days into a European tour, you're like, no, we can play with the space and the subtleties more, and they're going to really appreciate when you just hold off that note to the perfect moment and let it drop. But yeah, and biggest festival, I mean, we've played smaller stages on huge festivals, like, Electric Picnic in Ireland was enormous. We played a tiny stage, but I don't think I've ever seen as intense a salmon run as we were pulling through. This was one of the trips we took a tent because we're like, they're not going to give us a comm when no one knows who we are. So we'd bought like a cow skin. Like we just went to an op shop and got all the things that would be like deck out you could sleep on, and we're walking through. And I don't know how many people it was, and I've spent my whole life going to festivals and I've never seen the intense run that we were going up against before or after as Billie Eilish was about to start her headline set, and it felt like just an endless sea. Like I don't know if there was 100,000 people, I don't know if there's 10, but I know that I've never felt.
It felt amazing.
Yeah,
it felt huge.
It felt huge. It was not a great time to be moving our bedding, but yeah, that was probably one of the bigger crowds. I played Glastonbury when I was, over in London with my brother.
'Cause that's a big one.
Enormous. And that's why when people, get the shits when they can't get out of a festival here in 10 minutes, you're like, have you ever been to a big festival? Like you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, why isn't Neil Young headlining? Why am I stuck in the car park? You're like, well, which one do you want? Do you want a massive event? Like no one complains when they get stuck after the footy for half an hour, but everyone whinges when they can't get out of a festival for, and it is a pain, but if you want to get 10,000, 20,000 people together, it's a pain, but it's also really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you learn tricks, like next year we played that Electric Picnic, you're like, park near the gate. Don't park near the slush. It's like walk further on the way in and the way out and you won't be stuck in the quagmire.
Yeah. I guess that's a big thing about a lot of festivals too, is the weather you're dependent on the weather.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it does rain and grounds get mushy.
Yeah. Which I still have, I think one of the first festivals I ever attended as a punter, one of them was the Home Bake in Byron in late 90s or 2000. I don't know, it was around then. I think I was maybe still underage, but it was so muddy.
Oh, wow.
But a little part for me was like, wow, this is like the Woodstock thing. This is amazing. And everyone's just like diving into the mud and coming up covered in mud. And you're like, this is awesome. Again, great when you're 17 and with your friends and don't care and you go sleep.
It's one of those things you've got to carry around a set of gumboots now? Or for that, what are they called gumboots still?
Gumboots, yeah.
Or galoshes?
Galoshes. No, we usually pop in if we're overseas and grab a pair of gummies if it's going to be that bad.
Don't carry them with you, just buy them
It's
locally.
not something you just want to take. You don't want to just have, you can't. Like, if I was going to chuck the gumboots in, I'd chuck the Strat in.
What's the best travel tip that you would have for someone who is going to travel overseas and do gigs?
Definitely pack light. Hang your jeans up when you go to bed. Don't leave them in a pile on the floor and you'll get an extra day or two before you have to wash them.
Oh, let them air out.
Yeah, but we did the last American tour we did before COVID, my bags didn't arrive at all.
Oh.
Until the last few days. So I did the whole tour, washing, take the jeans as long as you can, just hang them up. But basically I had a singlet, bra and undies and socks, and I would just wash them and just chuck them up in the hotel on the air conditioning. And they were drying the next day. Why have I been bringing clothes all this time? So that could be another guitar pedal or, another 10 CDs.
Because you're limited by weight.
Yeah, pack light.
Pack light.
And don't, you can always get things. Everywhere in the world people have clothes and things. It's as long as you got your guitars and your passport and work it out. Yeah.
Have you ever been caught without having spare strings or anything like that for your guitar?
We've done a gig without our guitar. We played in Poland and came back after showing everyone around and the car was completely gone. And we're calling around and they're like, it's been towed. They're like, no, they don't tow. So we're like, must have been stolen. But we're like, oh, well, we may as well play the gig. And our friend Fliss Burdett, who you may remember, she had a plug-in ukulele. And we went to the venue and someone had borrowed, there was a nunnery across the road. Someone had borrowed, like one of those 3/4 acoustic guitars that we've all got in every school.
Yep.
And the PA was a couple of powered speakers. There was 2 mics. And so basically we're like, okay, cool, we're going to do this gig. We put one mic on the big guitar, plugged in the uke and shared the other mic. And I had some great Guitar Hero moments at that gig because like we'd play the little, Leesa would play, when Leesa was playing the big guitar, I just was like, this is so ridiculous. I'm just going to overplay this ukulele all night. And that gig ended up being so great. Like everyone was so into it, but of course they couldn't show their support by buying any merch because that was all in the car.
Oh.
But it turned out because we had German plates, they had towed the car, even though all the other cars were parked in the same spot, but they towed ours and we had to spend the whole next day running around Krakow getting...
So you got your stuff back?
We got everything back, but we still had the experience of doing a very underprepared
That must have been
guitar
quite
gig.
stressful
Yeah.
thing to go through.
I think we worked out, like, as we were jumping on stage that it may have been towed and not stolen. So I think we were aware... So, yeah, we had a mate, because we obviously don't speak Polish, but I think we worked out just before we went on that there's a chance it's been towed. You know, it'll just be something we can't deal with till the morning. But, yeah.
How has it been travelling through Europe and other countries with the language barrier? Is that something that you've found easy to navigate, or has there been difficult times?
Being an English speaker, most places you go, their English is going to be better than your French or German for a while. I'm sure there's been some great language faux pas we've had and stuff-ups, but...
Do you try and speak local language?
Yeah, poorly. Like our Germans, like we could speak German like a 1.5-year-old, but enough to sort of, our gig German and our food German and our hotel German's good enough to get by. Mm-hmm. French, it's just, we're trying, because we've spent a few summers in France now, we're trying to get better at that. But, they just hide all their sounds. It's like, is that a consonant? Is that a vowel? But again, I reckon we can probably speak now like about an 8-month-old.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so, point at things and, say the table, say the floor, But I think we're pretty good at communicating through the language barriers, especially with gigs. And you learn just to simplify. If you go in there, I remember the first Italian tour, Christy Lee and Missy joined us. And we get out of the car and I was talking to people, broken Italian, some English, and they're like, you sound completely different. So of course I do. If I speak like this, no one is going to understand me. So you have to be like, if I speak like this, there's a slight chance somebody may understand me. And just things like that. But, I could go into some language fail stories, but I'll leave it there for now.
Well, look, it's at that point in time where I've got to go and do a gig.
Yeah.
Lisa's just come to pick you up.
Yeah, we're all on track. We're nailing this.
Timing. Thank you very much for spending some time. I know how valuable your time is.
No more valuable than anyone else's.
Well, it's been lovely. And it's
Thanks
great to see you. Great to see you again.
Good to see you. And we'll look forward to coming here next time you're having a party and have more fun.
Well, yeah, we haven't done that for a while.
No, well, us poor our Scorpios still need celebrating.
We do.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking around and watching the podcast this far. And I'll see you on the next one.
Yay.
Cheers.